Morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Early. I am the Membership Councils Manager here at MBAKS. On behalf of our Sales and Marketing Council interim chairs, Phil Frisk and Darlene Denon, the SMC wanted to welcome you and thank you for joining us. We know that today's webinar will be so beneficial to everyone, so we're so glad you're here. We do have the chat open, so you can participate as much as you feel comfortable with. I know it's a little bit early, but hopefully you're ready to type a few questions. Feel free to use the chat to chat with myself or other attendees, and then also be sure to use the question and answer box. We will have a question and answer session at the end with Marco, so be sure to put your questions in there so Marco can answer those. This year, MBAKS has been making virtual events more than worth everyone's time. We have had amazing speakers and amazing topics, and today is no different. Some of the upcoming virtual events that I wanted to go over, the SMC Design Mix will be on May 18th. We will have a drawing for a Yeti cooler. This is free to attend. It's a networking happy hour, if you will, and we would love for anyone to join us. And again, if you attend, you get your name put in a drawing for a Yeti cooler. Also, in May on the 20th, we have the Remodelers Council webinar with Jackie Shaw on budgets and budgeting for your company. So that will be a very interesting topic. In June, we have the Professional Women in Building, Shaken Not Stirred, June 1st. This one we are hoping to have in person. We do hold these at Bonefish Grill in Bothell. So hopefully you can join us there. That's another free to attend networking happy hour. We would love to see you there. We will be virtual as well, of course. So feel free to join us either way. We do have a membership lunch happening on June 2nd. So if you were interested at all in learning more about MBA or membership, or have any questions about joining, or if you are a member and want to get the most out of your membership, please join us at the lunch. It's a very informative event. So if you need any more information on that, I know that we have a link in the chat to our classes and events page where you can sign up for any of these. And then, of course, our annual largest event is our Rex T-Rex Awards, which are happening on June 12th. This is also free to attend. It's going to be virtual, but it's going to be amazing. I can already tell you that. There are amazing projects that were entered. Some of the most beautiful, amazing projects won. And it is just going to be very entertaining. So make sure you join that as well. And again, visit the classes and events page on our website, which is in the chat. So we do have a great webinar planned, as I said, with our own Director of Government Affairs. Marco began his career as part of Gary Locke's successful 1996 gubernatorial campaign in Washington state. After catching the political bug, Marco worked for a number of elected officials, including Governor Locke, and on several campaigns in the state. The culmination of these efforts was the opportunity to manage the successful campaign for Greg Nichols to be Seattle mayor in 2001. Marco then worked in Seattle Mayor Nichols' office until 2006, when he left to pursue a master's in public administration at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Marco has taught at Seattle University since spring of 2010. He teaches both campaigns and elections and government relations. He joined the MBAKS team as Director of Government Affairs in June of 2018, and we're so excited to hear from him. So please welcome Marco.
Good morning, everyone. And my mic is on, which is good. I normally don't do that the first meeting of the day. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm gonna, I think, share my screen. So let me do that, and I'll get started here. Okay, it says I'm going to stop the other one. Let's.
I'm okay with
Okay,
that.
I think we can all see that, I hope. Okay. So before we jump in, I have to always have the obligatory, I realize I need a haircut. So we'll take care of that here shortly. So today we're going to talk about kind of a regional housing overview. And as I was working on this deck for everyone, I realized this is as much part of my um, teaching role as it is my role at Master Builders. I kind of wanted to start, as an old friend used to say, back at the Big Bang and then work forward. And if you hear tears outside the door, we have a 4-year-old that just woke up. So it's going to be a little loud, but that's okay. So I'm going to start, and we're going to just kind of set where we are in housing and what's going on, and then what Master Builders and our allies are doing about it. And then I really look forward to questions as well. I'll try to monitor the chat. If I miss it, I will definitely catch it at the end, though. So let's just dive in. Let's see here. Can I do? There we go. Okay, so we'll just start with our obligatory Seattle and home prices are going up, but they really are. And you know, I've been living in this region my whole life, and I remember that first big boom in the 80s, late 80s, as Microsoft really started to hire quite a few people, and we had a explosion of people coming into the region. And we watched, you know, articles about homes going up, and we've had some in the past, but that was really the modern era of increases, and then something in the economy will stall and then they'll go up again. Can we always do that? And I think what my main baseline will be today is we can't. We actually need to get our arms around housing prices, and we'll talk a little bit about our neighbors to the south and what's going on down there. So this is just a quick graphic that's fairly recent. It's Seattle Times is not what they used to be, but boy, they still do and provide a lot of our good data on housing prices. So this is kind of astounding. I moved back to this region after working in New York in 2010. This starts in 2016. In 2016, Seattle area prices, which absolutely encompass our two counties, are up 57.1%. The national average is up too high as well, and it's probably a different discussion on that, but 57.1% for really the most expensive item anyone will buy. And in many ways, you can think, well, you're a home builder, this might be a good thing, but let's talk about that. Jobs equal housing, or housing equals jobs, or both. And by the way, I'm going to have a quick pause. Nicole, the way my computer works, if I check my time, I'll screw up the presentation. So give me a 5-minute warning when we need to. Okay.
No
So
problem.
this says let's level set, which is used by a lot of people. I hear it from my wife who works at Microsoft, because we now, of course, share working at the house, and I hear this phrase all the time. It drives me a little crazy, but it is really a good way to say, let's all start one place and then work from there. So jobs equal housing, or housing equals jobs. My mother was the demographer for the state of Washington. So she and her team gambled almost on what the population would be in schools and cities and towns as the state apportioned their money forward, not backwards. So you had to understand what the population of Bellevue would be for the next 2 years, so they would get the right amount of money. And if they had more people or less, a lot of problems would happen. So she had to be good. So when I would ever ask her what makes a city grow, before I would finish the sentence, she would say jobs. She's like, jobs grow cities, and without jobs, cities shrink. She was very unequivocal. What I would add to that, now that I've been watching this for some time, is that yes, when you have jobs coming, it creates a need for housing. If you don't have housing, I think it also will diminish the growth of jobs. If it gets too expensive in a region for new employees to move in, they won't move in. And if the employers can't recruit the talent they want, they will not stay, or they will expand elsewhere. You watched a lot of tech companies move to the east side in Seattle in the last couple of years with offices. That's not because they wanted to spread their workforce outside the Bay Area. It's because they couldn't recruit in the Bay Area. Apple just announced a large campus in North Carolina. Same thing. We're seeing that happen. And that in many ways is a reflection of California's inability to grow. And in the long run, if people will not grow jobs in a region, that region will economically suffer. So we need both. We need to balance both. Coming up through politics, I was very much told we need to create jobs. We never asked the question, well, we need housing for those jobs. And that was a huge mistake. So in the bottom here, I put in italics, if people move into an area with jobs growth, or job growth, maybe singular, but not matching housing growth, prices will increase. That is a really important phrase that maybe just honestly in your mind and you understand it. It does not get said in government enough. It's starting to be understood by government. It does not get said enough. So let's talk about that one more time. If people move into an area with job growth, but not matching housing growth, prices will increase. And then I added here, and people will be priced out. So if you're living in a city that is experiencing high job growth, if you're lucky enough to own a house, you may be able to weather it if you don't have the salary level at a high tech that is the level moving into a community. But if you rent, your next rental house, you may not be able to afford, or if you want to buy, you can't buy. So people are priced out. And it's really important to understand that just as there's political pressure on elected officials that's been growing about don't build more housing, we are now finally starting to see the push from people that say do build more housing as expanded numbers of people are being priced out. So a little more level setting. So in most cases, jobs are a very good thing. I don't think you can find many people that work in this area that say we don't want jobs. But we need housing at all price points and in all regions, just as our rural King and Snohomish County builders need to be able to build our in-city, Redmond, Kirkland, Bellevue, Seattle builders need to also be able to build as well. People who work in a community should be able to live in a community. I don't think that's a crazy goal, and yet I would say very, very, very few cities right now in our region are pursuing this idea. Even if they think they are, I would say they're not, and we often have uncomfortable conversations about it. Most research would say maximizing housing around government infrastructure and jobs is a lot of, when you poll and you ask people that maybe even don't want housing, should this light rail station have more housing, they will say yes. Should an area near the University of Washington with 40,000 jobs every day, should that have more housing? They would say yes. It's important, but remember, we have light rail stations in Seattle that I consider underbuilt around. We have a light rail station in Mercer Island that will be open soon that has it has housing around it, but they don't want more. And there's some other Eastlink stations that are underbuilt, and Northlink stations, North Seattle and Shoreline, that are underzoned a little bit, mostly on the Seattle side of the line. Shoreline has done some good work. So the market should try to serve housing prices or keep housing prices down as low as AMI at 60%. So the median income around 60%. Can we in the market do it? Can we produce it profitably down to 60%? So the government can handle the below 60, because in many cities you see the subsidized housing, up to 120% or even more of AMI. And I would argue, I think the market can do that if we let it, and then really focus the money on those most in need. And then finally, renters and homeowners are both struggling in our current environment and need help. Sometimes you hear a focus on just renters or just homeowners, and it really, it's both. And the two intermingle. I have owned a house and rented and come back to owning a house, and vice versa. It's not like they're separate populations. They tend to go back and forth. So this is a picture we see a lot, but these are our the 6 counties kind of that make the Puget Sound region. I put these arrows here. So just how did we get here? Seattle started it. Seattle really built and still is 70-80% single family zoning, how you look at it. So they started this city and then said, we're done. And people were still moving here. People still wanted to live here. And so growth went east, south, northeast, north, and to Kitsap and the ferries. And then these cities didn't do much better than Seattle, if not in some cases worse. Single family zoning on 1 acre. And the jobs kept coming. So we have spread out and out and out. And we have, tremendous housing pressure in South Snohomish County right now. We have high schools, overcrowded for 2 reasons. One, that is the new affordability line for many people that are moving to this region. But 2, a lot of these areas have fewer kids. apparently the East King County School District, some of them, not all, but some of them are seeing flat or even declining student populations because the young tech workers don't have as many children or don't have children, but they're buying homes. So they're moving in. And so it's this cycle that's been going on really since the 50s. And there's been many reasons for it, from a focus on automobile infrastructure and other things, but it comes down to, at its core, most of these cities that are in the central part of the Puget Sound region just didn't build enough housing and didn't think they needed to. And once they filled out their single family zoned area and some density downtown, maybe they thought they were done. And I guess I would answer they're not. So we need more housing, but we've pushed things out and out and out. So what is that? I thought I had another. We'll come back to that. Okay, sorry. That makes me dizzy when I do that, but I wanted to see. Okay, so who looks like this? What's a warning sign for us? It's the Bay Area. It's a great area. In fact, this article over here on the right, Bay Area Homes Top $1 Million, I think is from very recently. Yeah, April 22nd, 2021 is the photo. I think the article actually ran yesterday in the Mercury News. So San Francisco is very much their Seattle, and they're a little denser than single family in a lot of the city, but that's where they stopped. They kind of did a townhome row house product that we know really well down there, but then they said no, and they look at Seattle as as somebody who builds 10 or at one point was building 8 to 11,000 units a year up until very recently, and maybe even still are. And they're building 1,000 units in Seattle, maybe. They have tremendous government and community input into construction. So just as you see a Bellevue, you see San Jose and all the tech cities and all the explosion, and you watch people have to live further and further out to afford. Seattle Times used to have a reporter who was from the Bay Area housing coverage, and he would kind of say the new city for a custodian to live in that worked in San Francisco, and he would be naming cities out here, with 2-hour commutes each way. And we aren't there, but I think we're going there. So let's just take so this describes the Bay Area: strong job base that grew dramatically around the technology sector, policies and communities that greatly reduced the amount of housing that can be built, and then they built some mass transit like BART, but did not maximize housing at the stations. Does that sound familiar? It is us. It's us. I don't know how far behind we are than them. I don't think we're as far as we think. I think we're closer than we think we are. And if you're ever interested, there are BART stations that have single family houses around it. We have light rail stations with single family houses around it as well. Like, let's be very clear. But BART is a much more mature, high ridership system. And in cities like Berkeley, you can live in a single family home that's very, 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 very expensive and walk onto the BART train and go right into downtown San Francisco, where there's so many jobs. And it's just greatly underutilizing the incredible investment that was put into building BART. Okay. So this is channeling my mother's career again. So this red line here is employment in this is San Francisco and San Mateo counties, which are two of the big Bay Area counties, and this is the total housing production. So housing production was flat and jobs came in. So you see this delta, this gap here is the pain that has been created in these communities without building enough housing. They are putting more people in the same area without more housing. So that is pushing people out. And it has made San Francisco incredibly expensive. And the outer cities are looking just as bad. The Silicon Valley, there's sometimes some Twitter threads that joke about a very old, fairly unmaintained home in Silicon Valley from the 60s that goes for $2 million. They're not joking. That's absolutely it. So let's see where we are. So this is that graph I showed when we first started. Again, here's the salaries, and here's the here's the housing prices, and here's the average housing increase. And again, that 30, I'm not comfortable with that 34.9 either. We are 57. We're so much higher than it. And the question I added is, have salaries increased 57.1% since 2016? The answer is no. So what dynamic have we set up? One, housing's too expensive. Two, those who are housed are putting much more of their income into housing. So all the other parts of our economy suffer as all of this money is going into housing. Now, our builders want to build housing. I just think they would say, I'm not trying to break somebody's bank. I just want to keep being able to build housing so we can sell more housing at a lower price. And I hear that a lot from our members. I've never heard a member ever. I've heard them say houses are selling quickly. I've never heard a builder say, I'm so excited at the prices I'm getting. And I understand. I mean, they really do want to house people. There's a very sincere desire to be crazy enough to go build a house. So here's a snapshot of us. So as we look at the map, and I showed you earlier, like it started in Seattle and pushed out, our highway maps tell the same story. Like this is the old WatchDOT map. I still use it. It's black. That means the cars aren't moving. So these are what our commutes look like. These are the bridges. We are at a breaking point. And I know we talk a lot about growth management and can we push the boundaries out? Would that help? It might. And there are some cases. There's one in particularly the Southwest UGA in Snohomish County where I think there's a strong case for an expansion. But what happens if we build further out? Does this get better? Does the traffic get better? Do we have the money to build more freeways if we want to bring people in? And we have struggled as a state to do that. So yes, we need to do the rural homes because there are people that want to live in the rural environment. There's economies and communities out there. But with that being true, we really do have so many people that want to live closer to their jobs and not be part of these commutes, and they can't afford to. I have somebody on my team who lives in Snohomish County, and when you ask where they wanted to live, they said Ballard, Kirkland. I just can't. I can't afford to be there. So I'm, 40 minutes away. So this again, this is the original map. This is how it looks like. You can just see the genesis of Seattle not building enough housing, pushing out, has led to our current crisis. Okay, so let's go back to government affairs. So I did the big bang, and we raced up to today. I'm going to take a quick sip of coffee. So who's your team here at GA? Who's working for you? So in King County, you have Jennifer Anderson and Gina Clark. Fantastic. King County is a really interesting area. And that means not Seattle. Just Seattle is obviously in King County, but we have a different person that does just Seattle. So we have two folks that do the east side, which is cities we know. They've been building for quite a while. Space is starting to get very scarce. Homes are very expensive. They also are working in South County, where just as I talked about, so much pressure went to the northern area of the county, and is now looking at very explosive growth in South Snohomish County. They're also seeing a similar trend now in the South King County areas, where we're starting to have the discussion that we do in East King County and Seattle. How do we build more housing in existing built areas, and what does it look like? So they've got really a bifurcated job with different communities, but we've got a great team handling it. In Seattle, we have Alicia Ruiz. We were very lucky to get her from New Mexico, where she was a lobbyist at the state level in Albuquerque. Seattle is Seattle's amazing. So we didn't have really as much of a focus until recently, although there's an incredibly vibrant building community there. And what's interesting is it's very much kind of what I think you might think of as the old time stereotypical builder. You have folks that own a truck. It's a 1 or 2 person, often a married couple that runs the company, and they build 4 to 8 townhomes a year, those narrow projects. But what I think we miss sometimes is when we're building big homes on big lots, it's a lot of, it's a high sale price, but 4 townhomes on a 5,000 square foot lot is also a very high sale price. So they make, a family living with a very small company, but Seattle giveth and taketh away. They allow density that we don't get in other jurisdictions. There's also a lot of layers of bureaucracy and fees that you don't see as much. So Alicia has her hands full. In Snohomish County, we have Dylan Sluter and Mike Pattison. Snohomish County, I think, is much more let's build housing, but still, even in rural Snohomish County, Mike is constantly cutting through red tape and bureaucracy to allow housing to get built affordably and efficiently. And then Dylan is kind of seen a little bit like what Jennifer and Gina see. He's got some of the more suburban but built out communities that need to start looking at more housing. And they're resisting it, some are better. And then finally, we have Allison Butcher and Kaya Caldwell. Allison, senior policy analyst, a writer, policy, fantastic part that supports our work. And then Kaya is external relations manager. So she our face to many communities and home building allies around the region, and also does a lot of work on our lobbying side. She and Mike are really kind of our Olympia folks, and we're really lucky to have growing team at Olympia that support our two lobbyists down there, Alex and Scott. Okay, so what challenges does housing face? So let's just talk here locally. Zoning. I could do 9 slides on zoning, and almost every way imaginable cannot be understated. When we zone a community for single family, 5,000, 7,000, 43,000, which is an acre, and walk away, we have all this infrastructure, all these roads, all these power lines, water, sewer running there, and we have very low density. And if the community is not growing, that's one discussion. But if you're growing and you build the next layer out and the next layer out, it starts to get expensive for the cities, to the point that we are having builders really be financially hurt because cities will not engage in the discussion to annex outer areas because they don't want to take on the expense that they would have not thought about 15 years ago. That they don't want to build the roads and the power to those new areas. I'm not saying they're that excited about building where they already have housing, but the old idea that you could keep expanding is getting a harder and harder sell to local governments. But when we build where the infrastructure is, and again, we need our rural homes as much as we need our cities, but if we build where the infrastructure is, we can put more people comfortably in an area which won't make a local community feel like they're being a local government feel like they're overpaying. The road's already there. When we've done focus groups, one of the most supported ideas for new housing are ADUs or cottages. Most people are very comfortable with it. We're seeing more cities do it. I'll talk about them a little more in a second. So the next thing is government relations silos. I am from a mostly public service background, and I would sit on the other side of the table from builders. And honestly, I'd hear builders complain, and I just didn't understand what they were saying. I didn't think we're that bad. I'm not in a secret meeting saying, let's stop housing. How do we do it to them today? And yet now that I've spent 2.5 years or almost 3 on the other side of the table with builders, I feel like there are meetings that say, they're not trying to, but they have all these silos in government. And so every department thinks, gosh, I really need the builders to start doing this. And the next agency says, we need to have builders do this, and we need a fee for that. And we're looking at homes with $35,000 or more dollars layered on top for regulations, fees, that planning, that the city doesn't even realize that all these departments have put it onto one. And we're really working to communicate with cities. And I do think we're having some impact with them understanding what it all adds up to. They may just watch the impact fees. They don't realize that there's a sewer connection fee, that there's the delay for a design guideline system will add thousands to a project. So we really work and really struggle. And I think we're seeing the ship turn around, but it's very slow. The next thing I'll say is a big challenge is state and federal inaction. It is very hard for a local elected official to say, we're going to put more housing in our city. If it's a greenfield development, that's one discussion. But if it's we're going to allow cottages, we're going to allow more townhomes, we can do small apartments here. There's not a lot of citizens saying, gosh, that's a great idea, let's do it. So we need the higher levels of government sometimes to say, no, you're going to do it. It gives political cover to the community and lets it happen. We're not seeing enough of that at the state of Washington. We are really struggling right now in Olympia on legislation, particularly in the House of Representatives. And in California, again, as bad as we are, they are worse. How close we are is up for debate, but their communities have more power. And in fact, in San Francisco, a local community approves or disapproves an apartment building, which is why many are not built. So California allowed accessory dwelling units. They did a statewide law. Some cities fought, but most of them just went along as much as they didn't want to. In California, I think in a year or two saw a 30-fold increase in ADUs. Now, many of them are internal. They're actually in the garage of that ubiquitous California ranch house. But they're, as bad as the housing situation is in California, they are doing one thing really well. It's ADUs. And they're in LA County, they're getting permits in weeks, not months, because the garages already have the wiring, the water, and drain. And they're building quickly. So we can see that when state pressure pushes down, it can make things happen. The federal government's the same way. They really, it's no secret. I mean, nationwide, housing is being underbuilt. I'm not alone in thinking that the Great Recession took enough people out of the market. We've never had enough home builders come back, and we need more. We need more builders. We always need more builders. So for the federal government to kind of sit on its hands, both in the past and current administration, to not try to say to states, you can't stop housing growth. You need to allow it. Like this is actually in the national interest, in the national economic interest. So those inactions are very difficult. And then finally, just infrastructure delays. We haven't built out. We are really late in building our light rail systems to move people around. Because when we build a node, we can build more housing. If those people can get to work easily, it's a harder sell. If somebody has an hour commute to work, it's an easier sell if they have a 45-minute train ride where they can do something. And we're decades behind that. And I'd even say on the internet, we're behind. We're really having some builders in some of the outer areas struggle to get broadband, and it's hard to sell a house without broadband. So we need to pick up infrastructure as well. So what are some of the other things we're doing? So we work to support the election of officials that are housing supporters. We have the AHC, which is our political action committee, and the ECI, which is where we help train people how to run for office. And we had a great class just a month ago where we think a majority are running. So local government officials can, or hopefuls can join this program and then run for office. So we also need to support local officials in ways that impact housing policy. So building more housing is new to many governments and communities beyond single family zoning. So we made this housing toolkit. What I mean by that is a lot of cities really feel like I'm built out, I'm done. I had a lobbyist for a Pierce County city who's a good friend say, we're done. Drive around city X with me and tell me where you want to cram in a house. And they didn't take me up on the offer because I would have done it. But the reality is a lot of cities have never had to think this way in this region. And how are we more creative? The way the Northeast is actually probably way ahead of us because they've been doing this for longer. We aren't. So particularly Allison Butcher, whose name we saw earlier, we worked on this housing toolkit that really laid out what are things that allow more housing in the same area. And much of it is still how single family houses are built, but maybe it's lot size averaging. There's a lot of ways to have the same parcel of land look like the same development you might expect, but there are more homes in there, which is ultimately good for everybody. But we also go into townhomes and ADUs, small apartments. Like it doesn't have to be the towers of downtown Bellevue that border the single family homes. And Seattle is just as guilty as that. There are neighborhoods close enough to downtown. I think a Russell Wilson throw from a yard could hit a tower. Everybody hang on one second. I just spotted my phone where my clock is, so I know how long I'm going. So I'm going to grab it and come right back just so I can see how I'm doing time-wise, because to do this speech and not know my time is crazy. Okay, it's 8:06. So I think I'm doing okay. All right. We lobby in Olympia. I just talked about California and their ADU code. We have two great contract lobbyists, Mike and Kaya, and Dylan. So Dylan too supports them in Olympia. And we've had some big wins. A few sessions ago, we had House Bill 1923, who sponsored Joe Fitzgibbon out of West Seattle. He didn't think he'd done much. And we were like, no, this is powerful. A lot of it was just incentives with a little bit of money that allows cities to plan for growth. And that sounds novel, but cities are so struggling financially that planning takes money, staff take money, and that they could do enough to process permits, but that real proactive work that may take a staffer 6 months, they couldn't commit the money to it. So HB 1923 let them do that. And we have seen an explosion of cities that are just passing laws for new housing or doing the housing plans that allow for new housing, that will say, okay, we're going to do, this is how we want to grow. This is the type of housing we're going to allow here. And it's tough still politically to be pushing for that kind of agenda. But I would say that it is also, with a planning deliberative process, you can bring more citizens along. So here's some bills that have been concerning of late. This year, Senate Bill 5235 passed, which was meant to allow cottages to be rented even if the owner wasn't in the house. And the bill got amended in the House of Representatives in a way that we didn't like. So we're still right now, as we speak, working to encourage the governor to do some vetoes, sectional vetoes in that bill. So even though session ended 2 weeks ago, a few of us are still living and dying by session right now as we try to move, get that bill fixed, because there's some real deep concerns in there. And then finally, in the transportation package this year, which is normally a discussion around gas taxes, they wanted to add a statewide impact fee on homes for transportation. And that was a non-starter for us at our friends in BIAW. And we lobbied very strenuously against that. It's been talked about for years. We've been fighting it for years, but this was really the coming out party for it, where they said, we're going to do it. And it didn't pass this year, but it will be back. And it's very disheartening to have a situation where we literally are in a housing crisis, and the first answer to a different governmental need is, well, we should just do more housing. I mean, more taxes on housing. It was incredibly bothersome. So we struggle in Olympia, but we are hearing positive signs from the governor as we are engaging on this veto request, partial veto request on 5235. We're talking to governor staff, and they're saying like the governor wants to do a package next year for housing. So we're going to be working with them closely to try to get something hopefully through next year. We formed coalitions to make more political space for elected officials. So the Coalition for More Housing Choices is many organizations. Microsoft is deeply involved with it. The State Labor Council, Puget Sound Regional Council, all these different groups come together at one table, and we lobby in Olympia and talk to cities about more housing. There's many things that it does, but one of the things I love that it does, we try to make political space for elected officials, so they have a place to land. We are putting the pressure, giving them the ideas on more housing so that they can move there. They feel safe moving there. There are elected officials that will go to unpopular places if they think it's right, but to be quite honest, they are fewer in number than we need. So just as we're trying to elect good people, we're trying to make space for good people to be able to say, no, we need more housing. It's not okay that housing's gone up 56% in our community. That's not going to work. We need to build more housing to bring prices to a more affordable place. So what are the ongoing issues that we face? Again, zoning. I could just talk for 20 hours about zoning. If you just don't allow something, it's not going to happen. And we have gotten very comfortable with the level of zoning in this region that is bad for the economy and bad for people. So we need to fix that. Again, governmental layering and fees. Again, we can always roll our eyes at Seattle, Bellevue, Redmond, Kirkland on regulation, but Mike Pattison has as good a relationship with the Snohomish County government as you could ever hope for, and he still fights fees and regulation. I think the next one is a lack of a crisis mentality. Again, that good friend of mine who's a lobbyist in Pierce County said, where would you say we should put homes? There's a lack of understanding. I mean, and that's one thing that the coalition is doing. Is one thing our housing toolkit that Allison made is trying to do. We're really trying to explain both the problem and what the solutions can be, because it's both not understood as a crisis, and they don't even understand what the options are to fix it. This neighborhood is what I expect it to look like. We can't go beyond that, and that has to change. And then finally, housing is in transition, and it's an interesting way to look at it. But to pull back from all of my woe is Marco, it's hard to build housing here, we need to fix it. The industry is in a transition. We see density. We are seeing density being talked about. We do have success in jurisdictions. So now what does that mean? Do we have a different type of builder? Do we see, we sometimes see East Side builders coming into Seattle who want to do some apartments, and we see Seattle builders going into the East Side because they can do townhomes. Because the East Side has done a lot of apartments in ways that Seattle didn't always think about it. So it's been interesting to watch transition. Construction methods are changing. We're starting to see modular homes, like homes that are dropped on the foundation. What does that mean for our industry? And then finally, energy. We're seeing cities push for electrification. So homes are built differently. The energy code that came out of Olympia a session ago is pushing people towards electrification. You don't have to, but we've had builders that just said, look, the easiest path for us is to go do heat pumps instead of a furnace. And we're now selling homes that have air conditioning in the title. So it's, we are watching, and your government affairs staff have to be, helping members navigate that and what is allowed and what isn't allowed in this transition. So finally, kind of here's a flavor for what our folks have been working on and doing. So the Seattle ADU code passed in 19. We went from 200 cottages that year to we crossed 600 in 2020. So a three times growth in a year and a half, essentially. It's exploding, and builders are buying lots with one little home on it and then taking it down and building a new home on the front and two small homes behind it, and getting very competitive pricing for those homes in neighborhoods that were basically shut out to people. So you can buy a new house, 2-bedroom with parking in a community where the entry level price in Seattle was 1.1, 1.2 million, good schools close to downtown, and it's open again. Snohomish County allows duplexes. Thank you, Mike. And he got a great tree code that's exploding the tree population of Snohomish County. Burien has a really great ADU code that we're watching take off. Bellevue just passed fee simple townhome code, which is fantastic. We've watched Seattle have a lot of success with those, and we hope to see it in Bellevue. And then we had a really great COVID industry response. It wasn't great in terms of us being shut down, but the staff that, particularly Allison and Alicia, working on, kits for our members. What does it look like to have a compliant site with COVID? Us all lobbying to get building departments standing up again after COVID shut them down for a month. It was a full-on team effort. It was really amazing. So I think that's a good place to start. I'm pretty close to 45 minutes, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. I'll stop sharing too. Okay, Nicole, should I just go through the chat? Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I do.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you. Let's check the question and answer box. All right, so it doesn't look like we have any questions yet. Make sure you guys put your questions in the question box for Marco. He's happy to answer anything. Brenda just said, great presentation. Will you do others?
Oh, sure. No, absolutely. I do this a lot. And if you see me on King TV sometimes, this is actually the same background. So I'm ready to go and have my fake light right here and everything. So yes, absolutely.
Brenda also said, we need you on a panel for realtor education.
Anytime. No, we've done it. And I think Kaya and or Allison have done that for ADUs as well. So, and one thing I'll say about ADUs really quick that's interesting. I know I think my staff think I'm a little obsessed with ADUs, but it's a for sale product, and that somebody can build an ADU in their back lot and sell it. So our realtor friends and allies are part of this wonderful transaction. Our buyers, who are oftentimes our friends, if everything goes well, are buying a home that's much more affordable. And I have a friend right now who owns a house in Seattle with a 6,800 square foot lot, and they're going to sell it. And I said, whoa, stop. Like, let's talk. Like maybe do that air rights condominium in the back, build a new 1,200 square foot ADU. I think they can even park it, which is new. And then they can sell the front house at not much of a lower price. It is a really interesting statement by the market, how little price is taken off a house when it's coming out of a giant yard. And there are days if I could mow less, I'd pay money for that too. So we're seeing this explosion of housing, and I hope to see it continue. And we really are trying to encourage a lot of the east side cities. Snohomish County right now is looking at their own ADU code that's really going to do a little better. So it's probably something it's almost its own discussion on what it's like to add a whole new housing product into the built environment that's for sale.
Thanks, Brenda. Karen has a question. Do you think home prices are going to flatten?
If I really knew, we probably would all be a lot richer. I think so current course and speed, probably not. And the thing is that post COVID, I have a friend who works for Amazon Web Services, and they just called in their teams. They've spent a year hiring people who have stayed home, and they're now triggering them. Boom, come to. He works in Seattle. There's obviously offices coming up in Bellevue. Those communities, apartments are now renting up again. Some of these people will buy housing, so I don't think so. But what I think I would say though is we're all watching inflation, and with and now economy going up and stimulus money going in as well. I think we're going to see some inflation, and that is the case, and we see the Fed increase interest rates. Yeah, I think my first fall at MBA, interest rates went up to 5%, which my father, who built his first house in 1974, would call free money. But to our market, that's a high interest rate for what we're accustomed to. And when they see that higher rate, we saw housing diminish quickly. All of our members were reporting that. So if interest rates go up, I think it's no surprise to any of us, we're going to watch home prices probably go down.
Thanks, Marco.
Okay.
We have a few more questions coming in. How have you guys seen cities respond to the housing toolkit?
Really positively. And it's if you haven't downloaded it, if you go to MBAKS.com and go to advocacy, it's right there in that first drop-down menu. It's really well done. And I'm not saying to praise myself, that's mostly praising Allison and the other people who worked on that, Lisby, Kaya, and many others who I'm probably forgetting, and I apologize to you. So when they have this document, it's not just the builders saying, let us build more homes, get out of our way. It really is a very thoughtful, easy to read document. And every time I have a staff member say, oh, I'm going to go give it to this city, I kind of wince for a second, because I know being on the other side of the table for a lot of my career, it's like, what are the builders going to show me? We've had real positive feedback. It's a small step, but it's an important one, that you can see what it looks like. Every item in there, I think, has a commensurate picture for, here was a Black Diamond project with duplexes, and they look fantastic. Here's what a townhome looks like. Seattle built 12,000 of these. Could these fit in some parts of your community? So it's been very positive. It also gives us on the backside the ability that when we come back for another housing conversation to say, okay, in these areas, we think you can do this type of a little bit denser housing. Remember that toolkit you have. So, or here's our toolkit. So yeah, it helps. I haven't seen it's kind of going to be a slow burn, but I think we see things moving in the right direction.
Awesome. And that is an amazing toolkit. So you guys did an amazing job on it. What do you think is the most important thing for cities to do that counties or state can't do?
I mean, if the cities were doing what they need to do, I wouldn't need to be down at Olympia begging. I mean, to be honest with you, there's a great builder, Troy Schmiedel, who does ADUs almost to the level of religious fervor. He did 6 in SeaTac, and the city's owner occupancy requirement scared off some buyers. And so Troy was with us down in Olympia lobbying on 5235 until the bill got amended into a nightmare. And when we called Troy and said, hey, that bill got amended, it's bad. And he sent this really thoughtful email back that says, I'm disappointed, I'm not surprised, but we need to fix it at the local level. And he's right. And so the cities have all the power in their hands. The state really doesn't say you can't do something. They just, when I need them to say you must do something. So all of these cities could be doing townhomes, ADUs, lot size averaging, like things that still allow that single family home, but just to be in a way that doesn't have, let's say Sammamish will still require 1 house per acre. I mean, Sammamish borders national headquarters or headquarters of international companies. To have that, inefficient of zoning is why homes cost so much in Sammamish and in King County. I mean, Sammamish policy affects north to Linwood, south to probably Federal Way, and west to Seattle.
Thanks for that, Marco. What do you have any advice, if any, for first-time home buyers, especially young couples or younger millennials who are looking to purchase a house and get out of their apartments?
You know, I love real estate. I even do some development. I buy some rental stuff. I really, I could do another whole lecture on this, and I'm sure our realtor friends could do better. But yeah, we have a really close friend I went to grad school with who's a lot younger than me because I went to grad school a little bit later, and they're looking to buy in a very hot market, and I'm actually inserting them into the ADU deal with the other friend who wants to sell their house. And so I said, okay, hold on. I have a buyer, and we can make it all mix and match. It's like the dating game, but for housing. So I think ADUs, and I know I'm a broken record, but that's a great way to get in. And we're even seeing in some communities parents selling their backyard to their kid. And my neighbor who hears me, and you don't want to live next to me because between solar panels, electric cars, and housing, I just all I talk about. I think he's going to build an ADU and move into it, and his kids are going to get the front of the house. So I think ADUs are the new first house. I was even lamenting once that the Finney Ridge project, that was one of our first in Seattle, the ADUs were still $700,000. I mean, 2-bedroom, new, beautiful, but $700,000. And Dave Main, who's a longtime builder, said, Marco, a teacher and a firefighter can afford that at current interest rates, because we always look at interest rates. So I think ADUs are really good. Now, I would normally say condos. I think they're great, but we just the state condo law, which we've your association helped work on to improve, that market is still lagging. So condos just don't have the numbers we need to really be that first house. So I think right now, because townhomes are so expensive still, I think ADUs are probably the first step I'd look at.
Awesome. Thanks for that. All right. Last call for questions. I don't think we have any more. So thank you so much, Marco, for your time.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate you.
All right, I'll head out. Have a great day, everybody.
All right, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you again to Marco. I do want to remind you of all of the amazing events we have coming up. So if you have any questions, be sure to visit our website, mbaks.com/classes and events, or feel free to email me nearly@mbaks.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions or get you registered. So we hope to see you at a future event, and we hope to see you in person soon as well. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you guys have a great day.